Hello everyone, DonTheCrown here, and if you're looking to play Bing 2 in the upcoming season, or just want to know how the heck he works, then this video is for you. We're going to go over the hero traits and details, talk about what I think are going to be the most popular ones, and talk about a whole bunch of different builds for this particular character, and I'm just really stinking excited for this. I will also have a campaign leveling guide ready to go a little bit before the actual launch goes live, about an hour beforehand. Which I'll probably put up on YouTube and on Heroic, but this is going to be kind of a theory craft video. Now, starting up right off the bat, the very first hero trait, Creative Genius, gives you +1 to max spell burst. And spell burst is a mechanic in Torchlight that pretty much allows you to echo spells. You build up your spell burst, and once it's full, you cast a spell, and for each spell burst you have, you will echo one spell. So you can like shoot one fireball and 5 fireballs fire behind it. Just kind of like obliterating enemies that get hit by the spell burst, and it's really fun. This class also gets 2 resource pools. Kind of think of them as like a left and a right kind of resource pool, and both of these have a cap of 100, and the left one fills up pretty quickly at 20 per second, so every 5 seconds it caps out, whereas the other one needs a special activation in order to fill up at all. And pretty much what happens is once the quick filling one fills up, the whimsy left side one, dealing any spell damage will cause you to trigger a whimsy explosion. This is pretty much like you throwing a grenade out at enemies, and it does pretty much a projectile explosion that uses up all of your left side meter, and it restores 25 of your right side meter. So you basically need to fill up your left side, it goes away, and you get a little bit of your right side. And then what this does is applies whimsy signal to enemies hit, or you just think of it as a debuff on enemies that are hit by this explosion. And this debuff causes them to take 30% additional spell damage for 5 seconds. So this is really great for helping you to kill enemies that are rather tanky. And then once you fill up the right side trait, you have the ability to press your trait button, which is the F. Don't worry, later on you can automate it. But triggering this pretty much allows you to unleash a huge slew of spells. What it will do is it'll immediately try to activate your main skill, and it will reset your spell burst stacks to full, and it will increase them by 200%, which is actually tripling. 100% more would be like doubling, so 200% more is tripling. So if you had like 5 spell burst stacks, normally it would go up to 15, but then you just like absolutely unleash hell on just random enemies around you, and it's pretty fun. And so put simply, basically you have 2 meters. One of them fills up pretty quickly, and then whenever you cast spells, you chuck a grenade that causes enemies to take more damage, and that fills up your like ultimate meter here. And then when your ultimate's ready, you just blow up tons of stuff, and it's really cool. Now, in the next couple of traits, Bing is very unique compared to every other hero, and that is because he can select 2 traits with each tier, one on the left and one on the right. So where every other hero pretty much needs to pick left or right, Bing has to choose inside the left and right. And on most of them, there's an option between 2 or 3 different options. Only level 45, the first tier here, has just like a singular thing that you're forced to take, and that is Inspiration Overflow. And what this does is it makes it so that fast filling meter fills up faster. Based on whenever you spell burst, you get 5 whimsy, and you get another 6 whimsy divide for every 3 spell burst, and that's on an interval of 1 second. And so pretty much just lets you fill up your fast filling meter faster, helps you get to your ultimate popping off quicker. This also makes it so that you hit harder with spells that are spell bursts from 20 to 40, depending on the rank of the hero trait. And most importantly, you start with 80 of your ingenuity, which is like your ultimate meter. What this means is you zone into a map where you start a boss or you resurrect, and your ultimate's practically going to be ready to go because that whimsy meter is going to fill up pretty quickly. And then you cast for the first time with it, and then immediately you're going to go from 80 ingenuity to 105. It's capped at 100, and so you're good to go. So this pretty much is going to be a really cool way of starting the map, because you'll be able to pop that ultimate like the very first elite that you see and just blow it up. But what if you could do more than just popping your ultimate when you pop your ultimate? Well, the right side traits for this level pretty much give you the option between two things that go off when your ultimate goes off. The first one here is Supersonic Protocol. Gotta go fast. You get a speed buff from somewhere between 80 to 100 movement speed based off your hero trait. And this pretty much lasts for, it falls off over 4 seconds. So you can pretty much get a big speed boost for 4 seconds. And then the second option is the Overshield module, which is pretty much gives you somewhere between 60 to 70% DR, but this only lasts for 1 second after you pop your ultimate, and you pretty much need to like know when that's going to happen. If you're automating it, you're just going to have periods of time where you're very tanky. And so probably a lot of people are going to go with the speed as opposed to the DR, unless you're probably doing like some hard bossing, then having like a period of time where you're like super tanky is still very stinking nice. So for this first tier, you're pretty much getting it so that you are filling up your fast meter faster. You're starting off with your slow filling meter, your ultimate meter, almost full, and you get to either go fast or be tanky when you pop your ult. And then the tanky when you pop your ult. Now the next tier, the level 60 here, the left side has 2 options. We'll go over them. The first one, Mind Domain, causes it so that when you throw out that whimsy grenade, it's actually going to leave a field behind on the ground. And this standing inside the field is going to give you a stacking buff that gives you additional spell damage every half second. And this stacks up to 4 to 8 times, depending on how long you stand in it and how, what level your trait is here. So this can give you up to like 30% additional spell damage if you're like on a normal hero memory, a red one. And this is pretty good. 30% more damage is a nice trait, but the second option gives you even more damage, but it's risky. So it's called Troublemaker, and it causes it so that you're going to lose somewhere between 20 to 10% of your max life, depending on the hero trait level, and energy shield. So it hits life and energy shield if the whimsy explosion hits you. And the whimsy signal debuff is now enhanced from 30% increased damage taken up to 75% on a normal red memory. So it's like 45% more for that multiplier, which is pretty nice, but you kind of got to risk taking some damage for yourself, and taking like a random like 15% damage hit is pretty scary sometimes. So it's definitely something that I probably will see some people accidentally murking themselves with this particular trait, and it might be something that people complain about. And if you're finding yourself feeling very squishy while taking this trait, just go and take Mind Domain instead. Now on the right side, we have several different options at level 60. Number 1 is Law of Ingenuity. Ingenuity Overload, which is your ultimate, has a chance to not consume your ultimate meter. So you basically have a 30% chance here, which means that there's a chance that you can like press your ultimate button, and you can press your ultimate button again, you can press your ultimate button again, you can press your ultimate button again, and you're just like blowing up everything with tons and tons and tons of spell bursts. Just absolutely going crazy, and this seems really fun. The second option here, Ingenious Chaos Principle, pretty much makes it so that your ultimate meter has a faster fill up rate depending on how many spell bursts you have. So let's say that you have like 6 spell bursts. Let's say you have 5 spell bursts at, a red memory. You have 40% additional restoration speed, which is pretty, reasonable here. And so as you remember, we're filling up 20 meter every time we throw a grenade. And so increasing that by 40% would make it so that we're filling up 35 meter. So you only need 3 of your little grenades as opposed to 4 of them. So that could potentially be very good. I could see this being very popular for bossing and for situations where you really want to push out a ton of damage. But you do have to press the button, more frequently here to activate your ult, which is where the next trait comes from. Comes in, I guess. The third trait on the right side here, yes, there's 3 different options. Auto Ingenuity Program pretty much just makes it so it automates your ultimate, but it slows down your fast filling meter until you get to the red memory level, and even speeds it up a little bit if you get plus hero traits here. So you can pretty much like use this for like lazy mapping. Don't have to press any buttons, just run through the map, but it doesn't really give you anything besides, I guess, making sure that you're automatically using your ultimate when it comes up. And so I can see this for like normal day-to-day driver type of stuff, whereas this is when you really want to get serious and you're willing to spam the button for a little bit while killing bosses. And so that's pretty much it for the level 60 traits. Just a reminder, you pretty much have the field that gives you more damage. You have the grenade that could potentially hit you as well, but gives you more damage for the left side options. The right side options make it so your ultimate meter fills has a chance to not be used when you use your ult. It fills up faster for the ultimate, or it automates your ultimate. And those are pretty much your options at level 60. Now, moving into the level 75 traits, pretty much the left side option has 2. And so after a 1 second delay, your whimsy grenade thing explodes a second time, and it culls enemies with less than 18% life within 12 meters. That goes all the way up to 21%, which is actually pretty crazy for a trait that is like a lot higher than, you know, a normal cull in this game. And this also gives you additional whimsy for every enemy defeated with whimsy, like the whimsy debuff on them. And so this can really help ramp up your mapping experience. You pop your whimsy explosion, it hits enemies, you kill those enemies, it fills up your meter super duper fast. The more enemies there are, the faster it refills. So you hit more enemies, and it just absolutely just goes crazy and causes you to have a very fast paced mapping experience. Typically, like the quicker you kill enemies, the quicker it fills up the meter so you can kill more enemies, and it kind of just feeds itself, which is pretty nice. So that's the first option. The second option, Flash of Brilliance, makes it so that casting a main skill has a chance to trigger your whimsy explosion without consuming whimsy essence. Now this has a 3-second interval, which I kind of think is too long. I don't know if this is necessarily going to be used, simply because it really, like, I don't know how, like, I feel like just going over here is just better in general. I could see this potentially being good for bossing or situations where you're not killing anything, but then the like culling strike over here is just so useful that, you know, probably just want to have that. Might use this for Supreme Showdown and then like have a belt that you swap in, but we'll have to see. And then that is the left side options for level 75. And so we pretty much have the Brainstorm and we have the Flash of Brilliance. For the right side options, we have a few. So we have multi-coupling equation. And what this does is that for every 2 in power or defensive skills affecting you, you get +1 max spell burst. So this is a way to potentially get more max spell burst. There's not really a lot of sources of spell burst in the game. We'll go over all of them shortly, but this does go up to 1, 2, or even 3 at the max rank, although it's pretty hard to get 6 in power or defensive skills on you outside of like using some additional like kismets or items and stuff that add those to you unnaturally. And then this also increases the empower and defensive skill effect duration, but generally it's pretty easy to get 100% uptime on these unless you have some sort of like negative dream effects or something affecting you. And so I'm not really sure how effective this is going to be. The second option on the right side here is called Hyper Resonance Hypothesis. And this is pretty much makes it so that when you cast your ultimate, you get a buff that gives you additional spell burst charge speed for 10 seconds. So as long as you can pop that ultimate every 10 seconds, you're gonna be filling those spell bursts up really, really quickly. And I could see this being very popular just to help you spell burst more frequently and get those spell bursts like kind of turnarounds to be as low as possible, because this is additional spell burst charge speed, which is pretty hard to find, you know, just in general. Additional is a just raw multiplier. Now, the final option here for hero traits is Contingency Inspiration Delivery. I did have to shorten the title of this a little bit to make it actually fit the slide, but what this does is it summons 3 little machines that just continuously shoot your main skill whenever you pop your ultimate. And they cast at like a 100% of your cast speed, and it says that their skill interval is like affected here. I'm not sure if that is affected by like how quickly they attack with your stuff, but this could potentially be pretty okay. I don't believe that these can use your spell burst because it doesn't say anything about spell burst on them, but you know, if they can, that's probably a lot of damage as well. So I could see this being very good for bossing as well, just because you have more things casting your ultimates, casting your main skill, which just does damage. And that's pretty much it for the hero traits. For the final level 75s, to go over them one more time, we have Brainstorm, the thing that gives you call, also makes it so that you can kill, when you kill stuff that's affected by your debuff, you get more meter. Or the other option here, where casting your main skill has a chance to activate your Whimsy Grenade. And then the right side options are pretty much getting you more max spell burst from Empower defensive skills and gives you a little bit of duration. And then you have additional spell burst charge speed, or you have these like little minions that you can pop on the ground that cast more spells for you. And that's pretty much it. Now, I personally think that the most popular combinations here are going to be this. Obviously, you have to take this one. There's no options here, but then going and taking the movement speed when you pop your ult is going to be really good. The, have the bomb be able to hit you, also a really popular option, I would bet, mostly because like you just don't want to stand in melee most of the time. And then you're going to see a lot of people taking the automation just because people hate hitting buttons. In general, the less buttons you can press in an ARPG, typically the better. This is probably not what people are going to use for like big end bossing, where you're just spamming the button and it's fine. And then you're going to take the ones that pretty much give you more whimsy as you are killing more enemies, and the charge speed just for faster spell bursts. So I'm going to see this pretty much as my expected main, talent options here. Now let's talk about the new pack spirit, because they did add a new pack spirit for this particular season that is 100% just built around spell burst, and it's maybe a little bit confusing. I've seen some people say that this thing is OP or this thing is broken, and I'll say that this is a strong pack spirit for spell burst builds. So pretty much when you spell burst with 6 or more max spell burst charges, gives you 1 stack of Squid Nova. And this is a buff that does not stack, but it makes it so that you do 16% additional hit damage for 10 seconds. At level 6, you can get this all the way up to 50% effect. It gives you another 8% additional spell damage while having Squid Nova. And then most importantly, at level 6, gives you +1 max spell burst with having Squid Nova. And overall, if you have like level 5, it's like 33% more damage. And then the +1 max spell burst, I'm not really sure how to do the math on that just yet, but having more spell burst is always a good thing. And so this is definitely a very strong pack spirit. I have like 115 combat crystals ready to go. So I'll definitely be pulling for a couple of these right off the bat. Definitely very cool pack spirit for the build. Now we talked about spell burst stacks, and here's pretty much all of the places that you can get them relatively easily. And some of these are going to be a more early game, and some of them are going to be very late game. So right off the bat, we get +1 from our trait. You can also get +2 from the beacon main talent, which is pretty much going to be the first main talent that we take. There's this new hat here that gives us +1 max spell burst. That's probably going to be a treasure trove reward. We can also get 1 from our passives in Magister. And then we could potentially get 1 to 2 from the coupling trait. If you remember, the one that gives you additional spell bursts for how many empower or defensive skills you have. This pretty much gives you more spell bursts there potentially. And then we can get +1 on the belt from Sandlord. Now the rest of these over here, I kind of think are a little bit more deep into endgame. Some of them maybe even like the deepest end game stuff we can get, but like you can get +2 from Kismet. It does have a negative downside. There's these new frozen ripple boots. That's probably something you can get maybe in the mid game. The +2 from inverse image is going to be like super duper late game. I have a feeling that inverse images are going to be something that not even I'm really going to get to play around with. It's probably extremely rare to get these. Hopefully I'm wrong. I would love if they were very common and they just had really crazy roll ranges to them, so you might not necessarily want to use them. That would be nice. You can also get +1 spell burst on Amulet. This does upgrade into tier 0 beacon, and so sometimes people will just leave it at tier 1, so they get +1 spell burst as opposed to having, beacon on their amulet. You can also get +1 from the pack spirit we just showed, and you get +1 from a slate. This might actually be relatively easy to get, kind of early game as people are first putting up the first slates. And if you're looking to get to that 6 spell burst to activate the pet here, because you do need to have 6 spell bursts, it's probably gonna be like 1 from trait, 2 from beacons, another 1 from helmet, another 1 from magister, and then you're probably going to want to either do belt, slate, or coupling in the beginning here. Frozen ripples also probably a pretty good option, but those are pretty much what you're going to be looking for. This helmet is not super duper great. However, it's probably gonna be something you'll be wearing for a while. And this helmet is what this is right here at the very top. Brainwave Emitter gives you cast speed, maximum spell burst, and then it slows down your spell burst charge additionally, which is pretty bad. This requires level 30, so I believe that this is probably going to be a treasure trove reward. So be able to get this while leveling. And you can turn cast speed into spell burst charge speed. So it's not really the end of the world that it slows down your spell burst. There's several helmets though that kind of like work with this particular archetype. So Surging Inspiration has always been pretty popular for spell burst. It has a 50% chance to give you 1 stack of spell burst whenever you use a skill. This does corrode up into 2 spell bursts, and so you can potentially charge your spell burst even faster by having a skill that you spam a ton, like a channeled skill. I think like Path of Flame is pretty much the go-to here. And you do lose mana when you activate spell burst, but you also get additional hit damage caused by spell burst. And so I think that these 2 helmets are definitely going to be interesting for Bing 2, but I think the real winner in the helmet department is going to be the new updated Solid River. This is a legendary that was added last season, and they've already completely reworked it. It gives you Gear Energy Shield, which, just energy shield in general is pretty nice. But then for every 75 spell burst charge speed, you're going to get up to 80% multiplicative damage for, hits that are cast by a spell burst. So 80% multiplier on a helmet, already pretty good. But then it gets even better, because when your burst charge recovery is at least 300% of the base value, reaching the max spell burst charge triggers your main skill automatically. That's super duper good. This is pretty much your automation tool in your helmet. And they changed where this drops, because this used to be drops everywhere in the Netherrealm. Now it drops specifically from the new league content. So it's going to be the big chase item, I think, of the season. This is going to sell. Typically this part here, the automation part, would sell for like 2,000 FE for a very, very long time from Mistville. So it's definitely something that's going to be pulling away from Mistville and getting put into this hat. So if this thing's cheaper than 1,000 FE by like week 3 of the season, it means that it is incredibly common. So yeah, definitely very excited. I'm going to get a few of these to hopefully drop. We're hopefully going to double corrupt this and get some good results. It does have negative 30 movement speed on it, which does kind of suck. That doesn't corrode off either, which is kind of sucky. And they changed the last line on this. So it says now restores 10% of your lost life and energy shield when you activate spell burst. Previously, this used to double the max number of spell burst charges you had. Obviously, you can't have that when you have a character who's going to later triple their spell burst charges whenever they pop their ultimate. So yeah, they've changed this hat around a little bit. I think it's going to be incredibly popular. Quite possibly one of the most popular legendaries that maybe we've ever seen for a new character. Now, they've also added some other cool legendaries that I think are going to be neat, or just things that are just going to be good. So this new amulet here, Lull of Greed, gives us max life, mana, energy shield. Also helps us to avoid elemental ailments, all those pesky things that pop up in Profound and Deep Space, like the Freeze or the Ignite, which is pretty annoying. And it gives us damage per max stack of spell burst up to 320. This is just increased damage. This is not multiplicative. If this was multiplicative, this would be like best in slot. But then it gives us 10% max mana sealed to gain this buff here called Insatiable Greed. Insatiable Greed pretty much makes it so that 150% of the bonuses to attack speed are applied to spell burst charge speed instead. And this pretty much is going to compete with the ability for you to, in your passive tree, pick up in Magister the ability to make your cast speed apply to spell burst charge, but that's only at 100%, whereas this is at 150% for attack speed. I don't know how easy it's going to be to get attack speed versus cast speed on kind of the same gear, but I could definitely see people popping this off in order to potentially like get their spell burst charge speed going super duper fast. Also, a lot of sources of attack speed also are sources of cast speed, so you can kind of use the whole thing together and get really greedy, I guess you could say. This boot here is one of the ones that I mentioned in how you get spell burst. Frozen Ripples gives you a little bit of movement speed, a little bit of cold res, gives you movement speed per stack of max spell burst up to 30%. And then as long as you're not moving too quickly, you get +1 max spell burst. I think that this is probably going to be a very early on type of legendary. I might want to use like day 1, day 2, maybe day 3, but it's not something you're going to want to use long term. Simply because you probably just want to go faster than this, especially because you do have a trait that gives you like 80% movement speed. So you might even just be popping through this on the regular. And yeah, this is just, it's an okay pair of boots. Now, let's talk about these skills that we can use to spell burst. And we're just going to talk about the different skills that have been used to spell burst in the past, or what I think are going to be popular this particular season, because we do have a couple of new things on here. So the very first one is Chain Lightning. This one is kind of a classic. Play Erica 2, deck stack, Chain Lightning, Zip Zap, Blast Stuff. Chain Lightning shoots out a Chain Lightning. It just does lightning damage. And then the very first like magnificent support here makes it so that for every 1 jump, the supported skill releases an additional Chain Lightning that doesn't target the same enemy, and Chain Lightning can only jump 1 singular time. But Merge over here makes it so that multiple Chain Lightnings released by the supported skill can target the same enemy, but they prioritize different enemies. It does have a shotgun coefficient, but this pretty much allows you to like have a ton of Chain Lightnings that pop out, and then they all get focused down on the boss and just does a ton of damage. This has historically been very, very popular build, very powerful build for like over a year. And it's probably one of the main reasons that like this particular amulet back here, Surging Inspiration, has kind of like seen a couple of nerfs a few times, is because of this skill combination. So I think Chain Lightning is going to be incredibly popular, but it'll also probably be incredibly expensive. Now, the second one here I want to talk about is Thunderbolt Overload, also commonly just called TBO. And what this does is it throws out basically a lightning ball that bounces on the ground a whole bunch and just nuking enemies, and it kind of chases after enemies a little bit as well. And so you cast out this Thunderbolt, it jumps 2 times and explodes on hit, dealing spell lightning damage. And the different little supports here pretty much make it so that has additional jumps, and the projectile, it gets more projectile speed for every time it jumps, which stacks really well with stuff like Gale, which gives it more damage. And then Augmentation over here makes it so that you get more skill area each time it jumps as well. And there's some other supports for this that could potentially work well, but this skill is just pretty strong. The one problem though is this does kind of tend to kill your PC. So if you have a weaker PC or you're playing on the phone, I don't know if I'd really recommend this skill. Now, the next thing, and probably the thing I'm going to be starting off the season with, is Fire Burst. And Fire Burst is basically a circle of flame that you just kind of shoot onto the ground and it just explodes. You just kind of like, I guess it just explodes out of the ground. And it does quite a bit of fire damage. They did improve the amount of damage this season by about 20%, I believe, or 25%. And they made it cast about like 20% faster. So it's a little bit more quality of life. And it just does a nice solid amount of damage in an AoE. And it has 2 different sets of supports that I want to talk about. And so the first one here pretty much makes it so that, I'm going to switch sides. Okay, sorry about that. Pretty much the first one here makes it so that when the supported skill is activated by Spell Burst, it does additional hit damage to enemies at the center for every 1 stack of Spell Burst, and this stacks up to 6 times. So that is a lot of multiplier. That is a lot of multiplier. you're gonna be able to get a lot here. And I think that stacking this up to the maximum for Bing 2 is going to be as easy as breathing. So it's just a very, very, very large multiplier for our skill. The second one on the side over there, Prairie Fire, pretty much makes it so that we have a bigger AoE for our fire burst, which is nice. It gives us more additional damage. You can level these up for another 20% additional damage. So it pretty much beats the pants off of almost every other type of support. And you can get like 200% additional skill area here, which is really nice for clear. It's pretty much like you just be constantly casting huge blasts of fire. And you probably just have to turn the visual effects for your skill all the way down so you can see what the heck's going on. Now, the other option here for fire burst is the combination of Violent Blast and Converge. And what this does is when the supported skill lands a critical, it triggers the supported skill on the target one more time. And you can't chain these, so like you crit one time, cast a second time. And this can actually cast 2 additional times. So you crit 1 time and you cast 3. And I think that this could potentially be really interesting because I'm just picturing to myself a Bing who has 10 spell burst stacks, and then he pops his ultimate and he casts out 30 fire bursts, and all 30 fire bursts crit, and they drop 30 more and then they drop 30 more. So you have like 90 fire bursts going off on an enemy. I think this is going to be called like the 50-90 build or something, because you're going to need one in order to actually play it. I don't have one. If you guys could ship it to me, that'd be great. But yeah, that could be pretty fun combination. I'm not going to lie. Obviously you need really high critical strike chance, which could be difficult, but yeah, very interesting kind of setup there. Now, the next skill we want to talk about is Ring of Ice. This is kind of a classic skill here for, you know, just popping off with spell burst. You see this pretty frequently on a Gemma 2 build, and it just makes it so that you have more chance to trigger the supported skill whenever it kills an enemy. So you pretty much like cast out and it, you know, hits a whole bunch of times, and it just cascades a whole tons of Ring of Ice just going everywhere. And yeah, it's just absolutely wild. And this is kind of just how Ring of Ice kind of works. I think that overall this could be potentially pretty cool. Gemma 2 might do this better than Bing 2 just in general, but I could definitely see me playing that as well. Ice Lance also has been pretty popular in the past for spell burst for like Carino 2. And this pretty much like allows you to turn Ice Lance into something that jumps up and hits enemies a whole bunch of time. A lot of times this has been used for wilt, to like stack wilt super duper quickly. So you might have to like turn this into some sort of wilt machine or something, but I could see this potentially being strong once again. Now we do have a new skill here, which is called Serpent Beam. And Serpent Beam is kind of weird because by nature, it is not a spell burst skill. In fact, if you don't have this support over here, Torrent, you can't spell burst it. And what this does is Serpent Beam and the other combo skill have 3 parts to it. They have like skill 1, skill 2, and then the finisher. And so this makes it so the finisher can spell burst. I'm not sure if that means that it's actually going to cast the non-finisher with any sort of automation, or you might need some different stuff in order to automate this. But pretty much this is like shooting out tons of fire beams all over the place. And I could see this being pretty crazy on Bing, especially because that the way that this combo skills kind of deal damage seems like it might be a little bit overtuned with some crazy multipliers, but we're going to do a whole separate video about combo skills. Lastly, Moonstrike. This one's very different because this is not a spell. This is an attack. However, with Wax and Wane, you can make this be spell burst instead. And so I could totally see us doing some sort of Moonstrike build where we are just automating this whole thing and just doing a ton of melee damage. There's some really cool stuff in here where you could potentially go, and there's one of the new prisms that makes it so that your weapon damage is applied to your spells. And so I don't think that actually works in this case, but you could potentially do some pretty cool other cool things. I don't know why I thought about that one there, but you could definitely do some interesting builds with Moonstrike. This is something a lot of people asked about with Rosa 2 last season. I didn't really think it was viable, but I think it could potentially be something you could do on Bing 2. And I believe that's it for the different skills. Like I said before, I'm probably going to start off with Fireburst. I think Fireburst has a lot of potential, but I probably think that you're going to see most people going and doing like Thunderbolt Overload or Chain Lightning. These are kind of like old standbys. These supports are probably going to be incredibly expensive. So if you're a canvas farmer, rejoice. Like Lightning is going to be a very good thing for you to be farming this season. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. Also keep an eye out for the new Solid River update here in the league mechanic. Definitely going to be interesting to see how frequently these are dropping. I'm really hoping that it's pretty quickly that we're going to be able to get our hands on this, simply because they're giving us some automation tools to the normal, like pretty much they have a standstill support that everybody gets for completing the campaign. So I'm hoping that like everybody can kind of get some automation tools in their hands a little bit easier than they have in the past, but who knows? We'll have to see how it goes. Let me know what you guys think. What skills are you interested in playing? Like I said, I'm going to have a campaign guide up before the league goes live, and we'll be playing Bing 2 live on stream when the season goes live on October 10th. I think it's like 10 p.m. Eastern, my time. So it might be October 11th for you. Come by the stream, say hello, and thank you very much.